So, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to the lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a short span of time within 30 minutes. The idea is to cover current affairs in a short span of time so that your entire day is freed up to cover other parts of your UPSC syllabus. You can't spend your entire day just covering current affairs or reading the newspaper. Therefore, the purpose of this lecture series is to just shorten your time for current affairs preparation so that you have more time for other parts of UPSC syllabus like polity, geography, history, economy, and other subjects. Right? So make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. It should be a daily habit of yours because this lecture series is one-stop solution for covering current affairs and covering them quickly. Okay? Now, just watching this lecture series in 30 minutes would be job half done. Just after spending the required 30 minutes, you have to revise this lecture series as well. Okay, the revision would hardly take 20 minutes of your time. Okay, 30 minutes of watching this lecture and 20 minutes of revising this lecture, and in about 50 minutes time you'll be done for the day as far as current affairs are concerned. Okay, you don't have to worry about current affairs for the rest of your day. Now, where can you revise this lecture from or these current affairs from? Well, along with this lecture, we will share notes of this lecture. These notes shall be shared on our Telegram channel. And where can you find our Telegram channel? Well, just below this video in the comment section, you'll find a link. You just have to click on that link. It'll take you to our Telegram channel, and from there you can download the notes for this lecture and spend the necessary 20 minutes revising this lecture. Okay? Please do not forget to revise this lecture because revision really helps you out. It helps to consolidate these current affairs in your memory for longer periods of time, or otherwise you'll forget them very quickly. So do not forget to revise. Okay. Enough of the introduction, let's straight away jump into our discussion. But first, let's take a look at the topics we shall cover in today's lectures. So let's take a look at the today's topic list. Okay, list of topics for today. Number one is religion and reservation. Recently, Supreme Court came out with a judgment in which it said that religion cannot be the only basis for reservation. So what are the constitutional provisions regarding reservation and what role does religion play in that? We'll talk about this issue. Okay. Then recently, as you all know, Tabla Zakir Hussain died in San Francisco, USA. He was a legend of music, right? But he died of a disease called Idiopathic Pulmonary Fibrosis. So what is this disease? We'll talk about this. Then recently, Commerce and Industry Ministry came out with India's international trade, statistics related to India's international trade. With respect to goods trade, with respect to services trade, all these statistics are out. So we'll discuss these statistics. What happened to goods export? What happened to services export? And in the end, we'll talk about a report which will give a very bad news. It is a grave news for people who are worried about climate change. Well, Arctic Tundra, which is known as the reservoir of carbon, is now starting to emit carbon into the atmosphere, which would really increase the levels of CO2 in the atmosphere and contribute towards global warming. Now, why is this happening? What are the reasons behind it? We'll talk about this. Okay, so first topic is related to polity, so GS2 would get covered. Second topic is related to science and technology, so GS3 gets covered. Third topic is related to economy, so again GS3 gets covered. And fourth topic related to environment and geography also, so GS1 which covers geography and GS3 which covers environment. Okay, so these are the four topics of our discussion today. Please give me your 100%. Let's zero in together and we'll cover today's current affairs. Okay, let's start our discussion with topic number one, which is religion and reservation. So what has Supreme Court said? First, let's talk about that. Then we'll talk about whether reservations in India can be granted only on the basis of religion or not. All right. Okay. So on December 9th, the Supreme Court orally observed that reservation cannot be on the basis of religion alone. Okay, so you cannot provide reservation on the basis of religion. And over here, we are talking about reservation in, well, government employment, basically, right? The apex court was basically hearing a challenge to Calcutta High Court decision. So Calcutta High Court in May said that religion cannot be the basis of reservation. An appeal was filed against this decision of Calcutta High Court, and Supreme Court basically sided with Calcutta High Court. Okay, so basically in Bengal, 77 classes, predominantly from Muslim community, were given reservation under the OBC category. Okay, Calcutta High Court struck down that decision and an appeal was filed in Supreme Court. Supreme Court sided with Calcutta High Court. Okay, both of them are saying that religion cannot be the only basis of providing reservations. In another news, in November, Supreme Court also said that if you convert to another religion, then the benefits that accrue to you on the basis of you being SC or ST, well, basically SC, they vanish. So, for example, you belong to a scheduled caste community, but you convert to Christianity or Islam, then you won't be considered scheduled caste from the purpose of state benefits to scheduled caste. Okay, you won't be able to avail benefits provided to scheduled caste. Okay, this was recently upheld by Supreme Court. Okay, so there are two questions which the Supreme Court has decided upon with respect to religion and reservation. First question is that can religion form the only basis of providing reservation under the OBC category? So this is the first question that the Supreme Court answered. The second question is, if you belong to SC community but you convert to Christianity or Islam, can you still avail the benefits that go to SC community? Okay, so the second question is regarding SC community. Okay, so we will focus on these two questions. Okay, can Muslims or other religious minorities avail reservation benefits under the OBC category? And do scheduled castes, after converting to another religion, can they avail benefits accrued to SC community? Okay, these are the two questions that are being discussed in the Honorable Supreme Court. Okay, now first let's talk about the OBC question. Okay, what is it? And on what basis did Calcutta High Court strike down this decision by the government of providing 77 classes of Muslim community reservation under OBC category? So look, as far as Constitution of India is concerned, there is no bar on the government to provide reservation to Muslims. Okay, government can provide reservation to Muslims under the OBC category. Constitution is very clear on that. There is no prohibition. Okay, in fact, Article 16, Clause 4 of the Constitution gives the states power to provide reservation in favor of any backward class of citizens if the government feels that this backward class is underrepresented in government services. So if government feels that Muslims are underrepresented in government service, government employment, and evidence exists of their socio-economic backwardness, then Muslims can be provided reservation under the OBC category. Constitution is very clear on that. And using this provision of the Constitution, states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka have provided Muslims reservation within the OBC group. But in 1992, Supreme Court gave a landmark judgment, okay, which is the famous Indra Sahani case related to reservation to OBCs. Okay, in the Indra Sahani case, Supreme Court opined that yes, you can provide reservation on the basis of religion within the OBC category, but religion cannot be the only basis of providing reservation. Okay, basically, what Supreme Court says that yes, on the basis of religion, reservation can be provided, but it shouldn't be the only basis. The other basis should exist. The other basis can be proof of their socio-economic backwardness. So you should come out with the proof of their socio-economic backwardness. Then you can also say that these communities, these Muslim communities, have been historically discriminated against. This has to be proved. And you should also prove that these communities are underrepresented in public employment. Okay, so along with religion, you have to prove these three things also. That's what Indra Sahni case said. Okay, religion cannot be the sole criteria of providing reservation under OBC. You have to prove other, you have to use other bases as well. And based on this judgment, based on this opinion of Supreme Court in the Indra Sahni case, Calcutta High Court recently said that yes, the recent reservation provided by government to 77 classes of Muslim communities was solely based on religion. They were not able to prove the other bases. Okay, underrepresentation, historical discrimination, socio-economic backwardness. They were only providing reservation on the basis of religion alone. And because of that, Calcutta High Court struck down that decision. And Supreme Court upheld the decision made by Calcutta High Court. Basically, the courts say that you can provide reservation on the basis of religion, caste, race, and other identities, but that shouldn't be the sole criteria. This is important for you to know. Constitution allows OBC reservation to Muslims, but you have to prove other disadvantages being faced by these communities as well. which were provided by Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka, and that's why reservations to Muslims exist in these states. All right. Now, the first question is answered. Okay, Supreme Court has made it clear. The second question is, if you belong to SC community and you convert to other religions, do the benefits that were given to SC communities would still be given to you? Okay, this is a big question. All right. Can religion act as a barrier in SC reservations? So look, Article 341 Clause 1 of the Indian Constitution gives the President power to specify which communities constitute as SC. Okay, so President can declare any community as SC community and will prepare a list of SC communities. Okay, now on the basis of this power granted by Article 341 Clause 1, President of India way back in 1950 came out with an order. That order was the Constitution Scheduled Caste Order or the Scheduled Caste Order, okay, which contains a list of scheduled caste communities in each state all over India. But this order comes with a caveat. The clause 3 of this order says that no person who professes a religion different from Hindu, Sikh, or Buddhist religion shall be deemed to be a member of scheduled caste. That means scheduled caste, if you're a scheduled caste, government will recognize you as scheduled caste only if you belong to Hindu community, Sikh community, Buddhist religion. Okay, only these three religions are allowed to have SCs as far as government is concerned, or governmental benefits are concerned. So as per clause 3, if you are if you belong to SC community and you were Buddhist or Sikh, but you converted to Islam, Christianity, or any other religion, then you would cease to be a scheduled caste, belong to a scheduled caste as far as government benefits are concerned. Okay, now many people have contested that. There were many cases in the past that a person from South India, basically Tamil Nadu, he belonged to a SC community. He converted to Christianity, and then he said that even after converting to Christianity, there is discrimination against me. But the government benefits are not accruing to me because government doesn't recognize me as a SC because I have converted to Christianity. So that person challenged clause 3 of this order, this presidential order. Now this clause 3 was challenged in Supreme Court, but Supreme Court so far has said that this clause 3 stands. So until and unless you belong to Hindu, Sikh, and Buddhist religion, you won't be categorized as SC. SC reservations won't come to you. This is very important for you to know. Okay? All right. Topic number 2. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Now, Tabla maestro Zakir Hussain, the legend, India's music legend, passed away due to old age in San Francisco. And he died because of a disease called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Now, as the name pulmonary suggests over here, this IPF disease is a lung disease, obviously, right? Wherever you'll see the word pulmonary, it means it is related to lungs. So he died because of idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, a lung disease. Now, the exact cause behind IPF is still unknown. Scientists or medical practitioners are still figuring out as to what causes IPF. Okay, no one knows what causes IPF. Doctors have only taken a guess, and that is why it is known as idiopathic. Had there been a cause, had there been a known cause, this word idiopathic would have been removed. It would have been called pulmonary fibrosis, but it's called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis because the word idiopathic means without a clear origin. Okay, so no one knows what precise cause is behind the occurrence of IPF. That is why it is called idiopathic. So remember this word idiopathic. Idiopathic means without a clear origin. Pulmonary means lungs, related to lungs. Okay. Now what is IPF? We'll focus on that. So basically IPF, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, belongs to a group of diseases called interstitial lung diseases. So there are many diseases which are categorized as ILDs. Now what are ILDs? Under ILDs, if you have any disease that belongs to this group, it causes inflammation of lung tissues, pulmonary tissues, or scarring, okay, damage to pulmonary tissues. And in case of IPF, this damage is so severe that it is irreversible, okay, and it causes irreversible damage to lung function. Now, what happens in IPF? So generally, when your lungs experience injury, your body has this capability of regenerating lung tissue and repair itself. Okay, so whenever your lungs experience injury, maybe due to exposure to smoke, exposure to dust, and many other factors. Okay, your body will repair your lung tissues if you are a normal, healthy person. So, when lungs experience injury due to environmental factors or autoimmune factors, when your immune system starts to attack your body repairs your lungs in normal body. But when a person is suffering from IPF, this capability of repairing lung tissue gets malfunctioned. Okay, it becomes abnormal. The body starts to produce abnormal levels of collagen and fibrous materials, which would make lung tissues, but it doesn't make lung tissues. So your body produces other materials, but proper regenerated lung tissue isn't created. Now, this creates fibrosis. And fibrosis basically damages your lung tissues. So much so that your breathing gets impaired, there is loss of breath, fatigue, oxygen doesn't get dissolved into your blood. Then because of lack of oxygen in your blood, you have other cardiovascular problems like heart attack and whatnot. Okay, so normal person is able to repair his or her lungs. People suffering from IPF aren't able to repair their lungs properly. Now, what are the symptoms and what is the treatment? So, fibrosis causes lungs to thicken and stiffen. So, lungs cannot expand and contract. Now, expansion of lungs and contraction of lungs is very important for breathing. But if your lung tissues are stiff, they won't be able to expand or contract adequately, and you'll face shortage of breath. Now, shortage of breath in medical terminology is called dyspnea. Okay, you'll have dry cough, fatigue, weight loss, drop in oxygen levels in blood, which will cause high BP, heart failure, and even respiratory failure. In fact, IPF targets a specific tissue in your lungs called interstitium. Now, what is interstitium? It is a tissue that surrounds air sacs called alveoli, okay, in your lungs. Now, alveoli are responsible for the exchange of oxygen in the air and uh, carbon dioxide in the blood. So, what happens is alveoli are these small air sacs which are surrounded by blood vessels. So, when you breathe air, oxygen enters these alveoli and enters your blood, and carbon dioxide in your blood enter these alveoli and in your lungs, and you exhale carbon dioxide. Okay. Now, interstitium is a protective tissue surrounding air sacs, alveoli. Now, this gets damaged in IPF, which prohibits oxygen to enter the blood. Now, what is the diagnosis of this disease? All right. Well, you can diagnose this disease through CT scans, pulmonary function tests, lung biopsies. Now, what do we mean by lung biopsies? Well, basically, a needle is inserted into your body and a small lung tissue is extracted. Okay. So, we can measure how damaged your lungs are. Now, what is the treatment? Well, listen carefully. This treatment to this disease cannot permanently cure the disease. Okay, when someone is suffering from IPF, well, you can only reduce their symptoms through drugs called antifibrotic drugs like pirfenidone, nintedanib, okay, which slow progression of disease, but you cannot permanently cure that. You can also give a person oxygen therapy, lung exercises, but these will only slow down the progression of disease, so reduce the symptoms. No permanent cure to this disease is available. All right, and most of the times this disease happens to old people only. All right, okay. Next news item is India's goods and services export. So look, recently Commerce and Industry Ministry came out with data related to India's trade, international trade. This includes services trade and goods trade. Okay, so services trade would contain data related to services export and import. Goods trade would include data related to goods import and export. Okay, and this data is released for the month of November. Remember, released by Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Now, this data says that services exports have surpassed goods exports in the month of November for the first time in 2024. So, India was able to export services more than it was able to export goods. Now, the reason for this is that there is high demand for Indian services, but there is low demand for Indian goods. That is why India was unable to export that many goods. Okay. And this is problematic. Why? Because as far as services trade is concerned, India is doing fine. But as far as goods trade is concerned, India's good exports declined, whereas India's goods import increased. And when you import more than you export, then you run a trade deficit. So for the month of November, India's imports were goods imports increased dramatically, whereas India's goods export decreased. And because of that, India's trade deficit increased. Okay. So what is trade deficit? Basically, let's suppose India exports $40 billion worth of goods and imports $100 billion of goods. So India imports $60 billion worth of goods more than it exports, right? So India's trade deficit would be $60 billion, right? Now India's trade deficit has increased because exports declined and imports increased. All right. Now this was the data released by Commerce Ministry. So this is bad news. Widening trade deficit is bad news. The only good news that came out of these statistics were that India's services exports increased. Okay. Now let's talk about the rising trade deficit. So the reason why India's trade deficit increased was because of high imports. Okay. Imports dramatically increased. Now, India's imports increased because India's gold imports increased. India imported a lot of gold and India imported a lot of petroleum, right? The reason why gold imports increased were because of the ongoing festive season, marriage season. Now, we all know that during festive season, Diwali and Dhanteras, during festive season, gold buying by people increases. During marriage season, gold buying by people increases. That is why gold imports increased. Plus, in this budget, government also reduced import duty on gold so that importing gold became cheaper. And that is why gold imports increased. Petroleum imports also increased, so imports were increased. Plus, exports declined. Now, this was because there is less demand for goods from India in the Western countries. Plus, India exports its goods to Western countries through ships. Now, these ships uh, travel along the Red Sea route, Red Sea Suez Canal route. But the Red Sea route is currently geopolitically active. There are various civil wars going on in Yemen, in Syria, in the Middle East, which actually has hampered trade through the Red Sea route. And India exports a lot of its goods to the West through this route. Now, because this area has high security concerns, shipping costs from this trade route has increased, right? So high shipping costs increases high transportation costs, makes your exports expensive. Therefore, demand for goods, Indian goods in the West has declined. So exports have slowed down. Plus, India exports some amount of petroleum also, some metals also, and their prices have been increasing, decreasing, very volatile. So when prices of metals and crude declines, the value of exports also decline. So this is an issue. Plus, many MSMEs in India face financial shortages. Okay, because of that, they are not competitive, and because of that, their goods are not competitive in the export market. So India's goods from the MSMEs are not competitive in the export market. This is also a reason why there is slowdown in exports. Now, please take a look at this chart over here. Okay. Now, this chart tells you India's imports from different countries. So India imports the largest from China, then UAE, then Saudi Arabia, then US, Switzerland, and so on. Plus, India's top import items: crude oil, gold, electronic goods, jewelry, precious metals, non-electric machinery, and so on. Similarly, as far as India's exports are concerned, India exports the most to US, then UAE, then Singapore, then China, and others. Okay, so these are import export destinations. These are items. So India exports a lot of refined petroleum products. That is the top export item India has. Then gems and jewelry, pharma products, transport, and whatnot. So this chart is important. Please take a look at this chart. Please remember India's top 5 import destinations, top 5 export destinations, top 5 import sources, top 5 export destinations, India's top import items, India's top export items. Please remember them. Questions might be asked in your exam. All right. Now, what is the relationship between a rising economy and increased imports? People say that India's imports are rising, and that is good news. Why? India is growing at 7% per year, whereas the world economy is growing at 3 to 3.5%. Which means Indians' incomes are increasing at a faster rate than world incomes. Now, if Indians would have more income, they would buy more, right? And when they would buy more, their demand for foreign goods would increase. That would increase imports. So, whenever an economy grows faster than the rest of the world, its imports increase. So, that is a good thing. Okay. Now, here's another important thing. We should be happy about services exports, but we should be sad about declining goods export. Okay? Because services export no doubt brings the valuable money into our country. But services industries actually create jobs for the upper income groups and high paying white collar jobs, whereas manufacturing industry employs low income groups, blue collar jobs. Okay, so if goods exports are declining and services exports are increasing, then it would definitely benefit upper income groups, but put lower income groups at a disadvantage. So that is bad. All right, that's about it. And our last news item is Arctic tundra emitting more carbon. Okay. So look, Arctic region is into two parts: taiga, which is a more green region, lower region in the Arctic region, which has some vegetation, and the permanently frozen region called tundra. This is most of the time frozen, and the top layer of the soil in this region remains frozen permanently. Why it is known as permafrost. So the top layer of soil, the top soil of tundra region remains permanently frozen. It's called permafrost. Now, recently, a study was released by National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of USA. It is known as the Arctic Report Card. Now, this report says that the news is not that good. Look, Arctic tundra region is known to basically absorb carbon from the atmosphere. Basically, this region is known to trap atmospheric carbon into its permafrost, right? It absorbs more carbon than it emits. But during recent times, it is emitting more carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases than it is absorbing. And that is bad because the only region that absorbs more carbon than it is emitting is now becoming a net emitter of carbon, would further accelerate global warming. This is bad news. Now, traditionally, tundra region absorbs more carbon than it emits. And how does it do so? Okay, tundra region is also known as the storage area of carbon, carbon warehouse. Why? Because look, you should be familiar with carbon cycle. What is carbon cycle? So what happens is that plants absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during photosynthesis and they produce food. Okay, this food is consumed by animals. So basically, carbon dioxide during photosynthesis is taken out from the atmosphere, thereby reducing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Plants create food. That food is taken by animals. So plants and animals both have carbon sucked out of atmosphere. Okay, all right. Now, when these animals and plants die, microorganisms decompose them, and through decomposition of these dead plants and animals, carbon dioxide is released back into the atmosphere. Okay, so carbon dioxide that was absorbed gets released back into the atmosphere. This is known as carbon cycle. Carbon is taken from the atmosphere and released back. Okay, now this happens in typical regions, typical ecosystems. However, in tundra, what happens is that because the climate is so cold, these microorganisms that decompose dead plants and animals, they remain inactive. So these dead plants and animals remain buried in the permafrost of tundra region forever, for many thousands of years. Okay, so the carbon that was absorbed by plants never gets returned to the atmosphere. Okay, in a sense, tundra region absorbs more carbon than it emits, right? Because of the cold climate, right? But what is happening now? The thing is that scientists say that traditionally tundra region has trapped 1.6 trillion metric tons of carbon across the region. And this is twice the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. So tundra has trapped a lot of carbon. But now tundra's ability to emit less and absorb more has taken a hit. Now, what are the reasons? First of all, rising temperatures. Arctic region is warming 4 times the global rate, 4 times the rest of the world. Because of that, permafrost is melting. And because permafrost is melting, these microorganisms are becoming active because of warming temperatures and they are starting to decompose dead plants and animals. Hence, tundra region is also emitting CO2. Second reason is that Arctic region in the past couple of years has had so many wildfires, forest fires, which not only smoke and greenhouse gases, it also increases the temperature, which further leads to melting of permafrost and emission of carbon dioxide. So these are the two reasons why Tundra has become a net emitter of carbon than a net absorber. And that is very bad news. Okay? All right. And with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation, but please do not forget to revise. Revision is very important if you really are serious about remembering these current affairs for long periods of time. All right. On that note, I'll be signing off. Thank you so much, everyone.